This is the Bleed, Eviscerate, Sunder Gladiator build that I cooked up for the 3.25 sellers of Calgary League. Now this build is started off as fairly experimental. In the initial phases of it, GGG added in new Retaliation gems, they reworked Bleed, they reworked Gladiator, right? The whole shebang, everything was changed, right? We knew this. But I really wanted to try and do something with the Eviscerate skill gem because it just looked really overtuned. It looked like I could dish out a lot of damage without really needing much investment in terms of gear. And that is exactly what happened. This thing absolutely shreds through the early game, shreds through the campaign. Once you get your second ascendancy, it destroys everything. You just have to hit it once and then just watch as the target just ticks down from the massive bleed, and then you just go next. Right, that's how I finished my campaign. That's how I finished my early acts, my early campaign. I mean, what am I saying? My early maps. Made it all the way to red maps very, very smoothly with just garbage gear. All I had was an axe that was decent. Everything else was absolute hot garbage. But I rarely died. I rarely found myself lacking damage. The clear speed was great thanks to Gladiator's bleed explosions. The boss damage was great thanks to the bleed. So you can see right now, probably behind you, that the bosses just melt away. I'm not even hitting them. I just hit them with a Eviscerate like once or twice. Oak in the end was bugging out. He wasn't taking a hit from my Eviscerate for some reason until the end, and then you saw him just melt away as well. But anyway, like even besides that, there's just so much in this build that's so satisfying and so good. So let's just go in game so I can just talk to you guys more about the offense and the defense side, and then we'll go over the POE, and then you can decide whether or not you want to try it out for yourself. Alright, so here we are in game. I just loaded up a random Dunes map. It's tier 2, nothing special, just to show what the build looks like. So on the defensive side, we are fairly, extremely tanky. Right, because we have maxed out block chance. I know it says 67 here, but in the POV it's actually 88% thanks to Gladiator's lucky block. And you can see my health bar is literally like almost not even moving. These things can attack me all they want. If you want to see a stronger mob, I can use them in the strong box. They all attack me. I'm not taking any damage whatsoever, and I won't take any damage either. I have a lot of block. Any hit that does get through a block, I have specific regen as well on top of it. So we have layers upon layers of defense. We have 79-78% all res. That will go up even more once we get higher level. We will get suppressed cap once we get like 4 more levels. Right, so defenses, we have pretty damn strong. We also use 5 endurance charges. So the new endurance charges also make us pretty damn tanky. So defenses, great. Right? What about the offense? Well, our primary killing ability is going to be Sunder. Right, so we're just going to walk around. You use Sunder, it fires off these large spikes. The spikes do damage, the shockwaves do damage, and they bleed. And then anything that bleeds blows up thanks to Gladiator's bleed explosions. So mapping will always feel extremely satisfying. And having this roll more monster life is actually good for you on the map, because the more life a monster has, the more damage it's going to do when it blows up. Right, so even if you have like way high scaled up life, right, lighted map for example, you will still feel like you're doing tons of damage even if you have really low level gear. This is why I chose this as my league starter, right? One of the reasons. So besides that, the other part of our ability, the main single target ability, is going to be our Eviscerate. Right, so let me just get rid of those first boss, right? So here's the guy. So he's hitting us, and you can see there's this icon above my head. Looks like this beetle shape, a scarab if you want to say it. Right, but anytime you see this icon, you can use your Retaliate skill. Right, in this case we are using Eviscerate, so we can use Eviscerate every single time we block. And we have pretty high blocks, so here as you can see we are blocking almost every single hit, and like that one hit just now got through, and everything else is getting blocked. That one also got through, but you get the point. Right, so now if I Eviscerate him, right? By we use vulnerability on bosses primarily, and then we just do this. Right, so he died through his little like damage reduction phase as he's shifting to phase 2 of his boss fight or whatever. Right, so you get the idea. Even in the initial map showcase, you saw that even tier 16 bosses just melt away. I even fought the Black Knight boss as well. And that boss, if you guys ever faced him, you know he is a pretty damn tanky guy. Right, and even he was not doing much damage to me at all. I was face tanking just about everything except the meteors. The meteors hurt. Besides that, his auto attacks, his beam, whatever he was firing at me, did nothing. Right? And the damage we were doing was pretty substantial. It was just sustained bleed damage. The way we usually do boss fights, like tankier boss fights, is we just keep sundering. We keep hitting with Sunder. Sunder had its own like hit damage. It's not a lot, but it keeps hitting. Right? And besides that, every single time he hits us, we eviscerate back. That applies a massive bleed, and then that ticks down, and then we just keep hitting. This rate has like a 1.7 second cooldown, so you can just almost spam this on bosses because the hit also does a pretty large amount of damage too. Right, so you can do that. Besides this, we also have a very important tech that I need to explain that you guys understand how it works. So first things first, we do have a axe called Jack the Axe. So this is the only expensive item in the entire build that I'm currently using. Everything else is dirt cheap, and I will show you how dirt cheap. But this is the main thing. This costs like 20 to 30 C. At the time that I bought it, it might be cheaper now. I haven't checked. But this gives everything that we want. We want damage over time multiplier for bleeding. We want physical damage. And the thirst for blood is actually the special thing. This is an aura granted by this axe that reserves 10% of our life. And it gives us 20% more damage with bleeding, but also it gives us 400 life regen per second for every bleeding enemy that is around us to a maximum of 5. So we can have 2000 life regen per second if there are 5 bleeding enemies around us, which will almost never happen. You will almost certainly kill 5 bleeding enemies. You'll usually have maybe 1 tanky rare, or like the map boss or the pinnacle boss or whoever. So to be conservative, just think of this as an extra 400 life regen per second. To compare that, this is a level 19 vitality giving us 183. Right, so it's pretty substantial. Now, why do we need that much life regen? I mean, sure, life regen is really nice to have, damage over time effects, one hit getting through your block, yada yada yada, but also we are using a combination of two things. So we are using tinctures, right? You can see I have a tincture, and we are also using blood magic. So more on blood magic in a bit. First, the tincture, right? Tinctures need mana. They inflict mana burn, but blood magic removes all of our mana. So how do we get mana? Well, we don't. We use blood-soaked blades instead. This makes it so tinctures apply a life burn called Weeping Wounds instead of mana burn. Works the same way, but just burns life instead. So if I turn this on, I turn the tincture on, you can see my life is very slowly starting to deplete. Right now, the regen from vitality is sort of counteracting this in the beginning, but then you can see it really starts to ramp up. You can see up here the stacks of Weeping Wounds that I have. It starts burning down really quickly until you reach 1 life, and then it stops. Right, so that is why we need a lot of life regen if we want to use the tincture in like continuous combat. But the way I use it is I turn it on, I hit the boss or hit whatever tanky thing I'm fighting with an eviscerate or a few eviscerates for the first like 5, 7, 10 seconds, and then I turn it off. Right, if the boss is really annoying, I use a life flask in between. I have recovery rate instead of instant recovery, so that if I use the tincture again, for example, let it degen me a bit. So if I'm using the tincture, let's say I'm fighting a big boom expedition, right? I may need that tincture to last a little bit longer for some annoying life regen runic monster. I turn on my life flask, and you can see this life flask is sort of counteracting the degen, even the massive degen from the tincture at this point, right? It only starts to wear off after a certain point, and then it goes down and then it dries out. Right, so you can see we can extend the time limit of that tincture by using a life flask, but ideally you want to turn it on, eviscerate a few times, and turn it off before you start dying. Right, if you're playing hardcore, please be very, very careful of that. But if you're playing hardcore, you really shouldn't be looking at a full block build because you will just die randomly if something goes through your block. Besides that, let's talk about Blood Rage. Blood Rage is probably something that most of you have never really used. But TLDR, we can use Blood Rage because we no longer use Determination, as in we no longer use more than one aura. Usually this build will be using Pride, Determination, Malevolence for damage over time, and stuff like that, right? Alright, so a quick note about Blood Rage. Most of you probably have never used this notable in your life, but TLDR, we can use Blood Rage because we no longer use multiple auras in the build because Determination got nerfed, right? In the past, this build, or a build like this, would use Determination, Pride, and Malevolence, Vitality, War Banner, all that stuff, right? But Determination being nerfed, we no longer use that. War Banner is no longer an aura, it's free, so we are still using that. Malevolence, we will eventually use Malevolence and spec off of Blood Magic in the future, like on a higher investment version of this, probably. But on this level of investment, we use Blood Magic. And you might be asking, well, how are we reserving Pride? We aren't reserving like 50% of our life. So how do we have Pride active? Well, we have Pride active because we are using Eternal Blessing. This makes it so whatever aura this is linked to has no reservation, but it turns off every aura that is reserving mana, which is a problem. However, we are reserving no auras with our mana. We are reserving them with life because we have Blood Rage. So Vitality would normally be reserving mana, but since we are using Blood Rage, it is not. Right? Thirst for Blood is also an aura, but this generically reserves life, not mana. So this is also just synergizes really, really well. Right, that is why we can use Pride. You see I can turn on Pride, I can turn off Pride, my life doesn't move. The only thing reserving life is my Vitality, 200 life, and Thirst for Blood, which is 10% life. This 10% life might seem like a lot to some people, but the damage this thing gives and the regen it gives is insane. So do not skip out on this. The moment you can afford this axe, get it. Before this axe, you can use the Rigwald Savagery, the axe that gives you extra rage when you're wielding a sword. You can use that as well. It'll be in the POB. It's way less damage, but it can definitely get you through the early maps and the campaign fairly easily. But you really want Jack the Axe. This is your main axe until like way in the end game, where you can get a rare one that gives you more damage than this, which is probably gonna be pretty hard. The other gear is very cheap garbage. Like look at this, this is life and 1 res and physical damage to attacks, and that's it. I don't need the strength. This ring is just an amethyst ring with a physical damage fracture. And the only thing I did to this was I used 1 essence of delirium just to get dot multi, and that's it. This has nothing else useful on it except for the craft for a little bit more chaos res. The shield, I raw crafted this. It has suppression. This will eventually help me suppress cap. The boots, I also raw crafted these. These have movement speed, life, evasion, and suppression. But for most of the campaign, this is literally an upgrade that I made like an hour ago. Right, but for majority of my acts, not acts, my maps, like I did my quest Eater, my quest Exarch, Maven invitations, everything was done with no chaos res, no suppression, nothing, just resistances and life on all of my gear, and that's it. Same thing with these gloves. This had no chaos res before, just a normal pair of gloves. It was complete garbage. Right, the belt is still complete garbage, just life and resistances. The body armor is actual hot trash. It is the worst thing I've ever seen. I need to upgrade this soon. Helmet, same thing, is just life and resistances. This amulet is just dot multi and physical damage and nothing else. Literally just attributes that I need. I need int and I need dex. So yeah, the build is it's pretty damn cheap. You can do exactly what I'm doing in game with nothing. The tincture as well, this is literally free. You can get this for like 5C, or you can use alterations and just get this. I didn't even blessing orb this to have maximum damage in the implicits. The rolls on the explicits are also like tier 3. This can go up to 50% damage over time multiplier, like the max roll. So there's a lot that can still be done to upgrade this build from a poop budget to a relatively less poop budget. So keep that in mind. Besides that, I'm pretty sure that is everything that we need to cover on the skill tree. We use resolute technique so that our hits can't be evaded. We use unwavering stance so that we can't evade because we want to block. We don't want to dodge, right? We use versatile combatant. This is what gives us our spell block. We overcap our attack block so that we can get spell block. This is why we have 65% chance to block as our maximum block, if you can see here, at 65% instead of 75%. I have 2% more here thanks to this block mastery. I was supposed to change this and take life gain on block or literally anything else because this doesn't really change things much. I just took this because I did feel like I was very randomly sometimes dying to a really big smack, like a big physical damage attack smack. So that's why I took this, but I don't think it's necessary. Once I level up more, I will be going into this suppression wheel here. And then once I get a few more levels after that, I will probably go into prismatic skin for more max res, or maybe I'll go up here into Heart of the Warrior for a massive chunk of life. I'll see about that. Besides that, I think that's pretty much it. We just have life and block and endurance charges and bleed nodes and axe nodes and retaliation nodes. Oh, quick note about this. We need the AoE because our eviscerate has 2 waves and they can overlap. So if you are standing right in front of the boss and you have this node anointed or taken and you hit the boss, they will get it by both waves. This thing will do double the damage and you are a happy person because you just did more damage than you were supposed to do. Congratulations. Besides that, quick note over the gem links: vitality, vulnerability. We self-cast vulnerability on bosses. That's mostly it. War banner. I've never remembered to put this down, but if you remember it, hey, you're amazing. This will give you a lot more damage while you're fighting bosses. Pride, Eternal Blessing, we talked about this. Cast from damage taken. Molten Shell, very simple. Thunder as our clearing ability with Fist of War. Chance to bleed. Now, I use Cruelty or Brutality. You can use either or in this gem link. Cruelty gives you more damage over time with the bleed that Sunder applies while you're mapping. So if you want that, you can take that. If you want to get more solid smack damage with Brutality, you can get that too. Completely depends. It's up to you. I chose Cruelty because I just like hitting and then walking away and letting the bleed do its thing. It's my take. Urgent Orders, Seismic Cry, Enduring Cry. I just had an extra link, so that's why I put this here, so that my war cries feel a bit faster. Otherwise, they're, a bit slow. I don't like them being slow, so I put that there. Blood Rage for Frenzy Charge generation. Shield Charge, faster attack, so that'd be Shield Charge and really fast. Time Dash to get over ledges. Pretty simple. The main 6th link is our Eviscerate, obviously, with Expert Retaliation. This is what makes the skill really comfortable and smooth to map with. You can get rid of this. Yeah, like you can just take this off and put another damage link here. You can put Cruelty here. You can put, I don't know, whatever the hell you feel like putting in here. However, nothing really fits. This is probably the best thing in here because you can just hit the boss more because of that 76% more cooldown recovery rate. Because without this, this thing has a 3-second cooldown, and with this, it's a 1.7. And once you get more quality in this, it's gonna be like 1.4 seconds. Once you get quality on this, it'll be even less. It'll be close to 1 second. So you get the point, right? You want more cooldown reduction on this so you can spam this. Why do you want to spam this? Well, because we are using volatility. And this is a bit of a questionable link because the higher our hit damage is, the more the bleed damage is. So if we hit with a skill that has a cooldown and it low rolls, it's going to be a very weak bleed. But if it high rolls, it's going to be extremely strong bleed. So sometimes I've seen like I hit an eviscerate and it feels like I did nothing, like a really low roll. And sometimes it just absolutely shreds even the tankiest rare that I was struggling to kill. Right, so that's that. This will synergize really well with our slotless coil. Once you can afford that, that's probably going to be the first and most major build upgrade, our slotless coil. And then after that is just, sky's the limit from there, right? Suppression and everything. Besides that, I'm pretty sure that covers everything. I'm quickly going to go over the POB of this as well, just to show how the configuration is done. But everything is fairly summed up here. But let's go over there and get that done too. Alright, so this is the POB that I've set up for the character. This is exactly the way my character currently is in the game. So we currently have 1.4 million bleed DPS combined with our eviscerate. This is the config right here. This we are using endurance charges, we are using frenzy charges, we're using onslaught, we're using fortify. We get rage because we are hitting with an axe. We will most likely always be killing recently. We will always be blocking recently. The enemy will always be moving because we're applying aggravated bleed. The enemy will always be bleeding because we have a 100% chance to bleed. There will always be one bleeding enemy for thirst of blood. Guardian Pinnacle boss setup. If you want, you can turn off frenzy charges because we don't have a way to generate frenzy charges for Pinnacle bosses. We also don't have a way to generate an onslaught for Pinnacle bosses. We can turn that off as well. We can turn off killed recently too. You can see the damage is changing. The only thing that changed the damage was the frenzy charges. You can also, pretty sure that is all. Yeah, that's all. So items real quick. So this is not taking into account the tincture because POB doesn't like the wording that GGG used for tinctures. So if you want to just check how much damage they do, you just have to remove the width or 4 melee weapon lines like that. So now it's taking it into account. Now if I do this, we go from 1.2 million bleed to 1.6 million bleed, right? And if I was to get a proper roll of this, which is a 50% damage over time multiplier, is the highest this can roll, this will go up to a 1.79, 1.8 million bleed damage, right? And this on a build that is literally 30C, the entire budget of this build relies solely on the axe, and everything else is just tank. There's no damage anywhere else. Like everywhere else, you can get the damage that I'm getting with 2C, 3C rares, right? Literally, and nothing else. It's all not. This is inflated. Let me turn molten shell off. Okay, so that's the offense side. Defense side, our fizz max hit, as I said, isn't going to be that high. We don't have the most armor. We are purely relying on our blocks to save us from our physical damage. Elemental damage is pretty high because we do have relatively high resistances and we have endurance charges. If I turn endurance charges off, so you can see the elemental max hit does go down, but that's fine. Besides that, I did put a conservative amount of rage. I could have put 30 rage for mapping, but for bosses, let's just say we have like 10 or 15 rage. Doesn't change much in terms of our damage anyway. So you can see it's a pretty conservative tree. There's nothing to really explain here, nothing to explain here. That's pretty much it. If you want to try this, go for it. I will answer any questions anyone has in the comments or on my Discord. This is not a full in-depth build guide, so please bear that in mind. I usually do upload like very in-depth, everything explained, hour-long build guides. But I just wanted to get a quick, short one out there just for anyone that really wants to maybe try this out. Maybe you're a Slayer, maybe you're a champion, or maybe you're playing some different Gladiator build like Scissorin's Spectral Shield Throw, and you want to try something else. You can try this. The cost to enter this is extremely cheap. All you need is Jack the Axe and a shield and any armors and any 6 link that you can get your hands on. That is 6 reds, and that's it, right? And cap your resistances somehow, and that's it, right? That's all you really need. So good luck, and bye-bye.